Rome didn't build its empire on courage alone. It built it on debt. We love to imagine Roman legions as unstoppable warriors, men of discipline, loyalty, and iron resolve. But behind every gleaming helmet, every shining gladius, every triumphant march through a conquered city, there was something far less heroic holding it all together. Debt, a mountain of it. Because courage wins battles, but debt wins wars. Feeding an army of hundreds of thousands, supplying them with armor, weapons, food, roads, ships, and siege engines, that doesn't come cheap. Empires don't expand on passion, they expand on payrolls. So the question is, how did Rome manage to fund a war machine that spanned continents for over 700 years? Simple. It turned war itself into a business model. In the early Republic, Rome's army wasn't professional. It was made up of citizens, farmers who left their fields to fight when duty called. You brought your own armor, your own sword, and after a season of campaigning, you went back to your land. But as the Republic expanded, wars grew longer and frontiers pushed farther. A man could be gone for years. His crops failed, his debts grew, and his farm withered away. The old system, patriotic citizens fighting for the state, started to crumble. Rome needed a new model, so the state began paying soldiers. Not much, but enough to make soldiering a career. The first steps toward a standing army, loyal not to the Senate, but to whoever paid them. And that changed everything. Because once soldiers fought for pay instead of pride, the question became, who funds the army? Who controls the purse? The answer was the wealthy, the equites, Rome's rising financial class, began lending money to the Republic to fund its wars. These weren't donations. They were investments, loans with interest, contracts with privileges. The birth of a partnership between war and capital, a system built on debt. Every victory brought new wealth, plundered gold, new slaves, fertile lands, and tax revenues from conquered provinces. War funded war. Expansion became the only way to balance the books. The more Rome conquered, the richer its creditors became. Generals promised their soldiers riches and land, while senators quietly bought shares in military campaigns. Private contractors, the publicani, handled everything from tax collection to army logistics. The result? A military-industrial complex, 2,000 years before the term existed. Except these businessmen wore togas. But this system had a flaw. It worked only as long as Rome kept expanding. When the frontiers slowed, when there were fewer lands to conquer, the flow of loot stopped, but the cost didn't. Soldiers still needed pay, creditors still wanted interest. The machine had to keep running, even when there was nothing left to feed it. So Rome turned to the oldest trick in the imperial playbook. It started creating money out of thin air. Under Emperor Nero, the silver content of the denarius, the backbone of the Roman economy, was quietly reduced. What had once been a coin of solid silver became, over the centuries, a cheap alloy with a silver wash. It was a subtle fraud, and for a while it worked. But as more coins entered circulation, prices rose. Inflation eroded savings. Soldiers demanded higher pay. Merchants lost faith in the currency. And by the 3rd century, the Roman monetary system was spiraling toward collapse. The rich adapted, as they always do. They shifted their wealth into land, slaves, and foreign trade. Things that held value even as the currency melted. The poor, meanwhile, paid taxes in worthless coins. The state demanded more, while giving less. Public services decayed. Corruption spread through every level of government. And yet the wars didn't stop. They couldn't. Rome's economy had become addicted to expansion. Without it, the entire structure started eating itself from the inside. Sound familiar? Look around today. Governments spending money they don't have. Wars financed not with treasure, but with debt. Central banks quietly creating liquidity to keep markets calm. The language changed. Stimulus, quantitative easing, monetary policy. But the mechanics are eerily familiar. We borrow, we spend, we inflate, we repeat. The same dynamic that hollowed out Rome's economy echoes in ours. A financial elite profits from every crisis, defense contractors, bankers, speculators, while the average citizen watches purchasing power erode year after year. Growth becomes an obligation, expansion an addiction, and when expansion stops, the system turns inward. Taxes rise, currencies weaken, inequality explodes, and the empire starts consuming its own. That's when states resort to distraction. Bread and circuses then, entertainment and headlines now. Keep the population entertained, and maybe they won't ask why their money buys less every year. But deep down, the math still isn't working. History doesn't just repeat itself, it compounds. Rome shows us that when a civilization ties its stability to perpetual growth, it writes its own expiration date. Because no empire, Roman, British, or American, can expand forever. Eventually, you run out of frontiers. But the debt remains, the promises remain, the expectations remain. And when that happens, the empire doesn't fall to enemies, it collapses under its own weight. So next time you hear about a new conflict, a new stimulus package, or a temporary emergency measure, don't just watch the news. Follow the money. Ask, who lends, who profits, and who pays in the end? Because Rome didn't fall in a single day. Now, it eroded over centuries. And the cracks always started in the balance sheets, not on the battlefield. Empires don't end when the enemy breaks the gate. They end when the debt gets too heavy, and no one dares to fix the math. If this gave you a new way to see history, hit subscribe. Because the past doesn't just tell stories, it leaves blueprints, and right now we're still following Rome's.